On September 11th, one of the most suspicious plane hijacking and crashes happened, but we're not talking about this plane crash or this one or this one. We're talking about the plane crash on September 11th, 1994, when a man stole a Cessna plane and crashed into the White House in a supposed assassination attempt on Bill Clinton. The plane crashed into a wall 2 stories below the presidential bedroom that Bill and Hillary Clinton slept in. Because of renovations, they weren't sleeping there that night, but had they been sleeping there and had the plane crashed just a few feet higher, they both could have been killed. Now, obviously, the fact that this hijacking happened on September 11th is the weirdest thing ever, but there are also a lot of other really suspicious things about this crash. Frank Eugene Corder was the man who stole the plane and crashed it, and he was a real mystery man. He had no real motive and left no suicide note. It was claimed this was an assassination attempt on Clinton's life, but Corder's friends said he had no ill feelings towards Clinton. The official story was that he was high on drugs and just kind of randomly decided to steal a plane and crash it into the White House for no real reason. He was labeled a crazed lone nut assassin, and typically when something happens and it's attributed to a crazed lone nut, there's way more to the story. And that's most likely the case here too, because there's some strange things about this crash. Unbelievably, the plane was allowed to fly unimpeded in the airspace around the White House, which is designated as P-56 restricted, meaning it's a no-fly zone. For reasons that were never really explained, the plane wasn't intercepted or even warned. And it's also strange that this plane wasn't fired upon as it approached the White House, since it said that security guard the White House roof armed with shorter-fired missile launchers to shoot down approaching aircraft. And again, it was never really explained why this plane wasn't shot down, almost like the crash was just allowed to happen. And it's also interesting to note that earlier in the night of September 11th, the Clintons had attended Ford's Theater, where President Lincoln was assassinated. And the night of September 11th, the Clintons were staying in the Blair house across the street during the White House renovations, which was where the assassination attempt on President Truman happened in 1950. But of course, the strangest thing about this hijacking and plane crash is the date. It just happens to be September 11th, exactly 7 years before the September 11th, 2001 attacks. Which is just really bizarre, especially when you consider that the flight that crashed in Pennsylvania on September 11, 2001 was supposedly on its way to Washington to be crashed into the White House. There were also a ton of rumors that there was way more to the story of this 1994 hijacking and plane crash. The most prominent were that enemies of Bill Clinton were behind the assassination attempt, and the whole lone nut crazy person explanation was just a cover. It would explain why the plane wasn't warned or fired upon as it flew through what's probably the most heavily guarded airspace in the world. It was even speculated that Corder was murdered beforehand, placed in the plane, and then the plane was flown via remote control into the White House. No one witnessed Corder steal the plane, and he often worked late at night alone in the airplane hangar building a plane, which would have made it easy to kill him, place his body in the remote control plane, then make it appear that he'd simply died in the crash. Bill Clinton definitely had a ton of enemies. You've probably heard of the Clinton kill list, a list of well over 100 people with close ties to Bill and Hillary who've died under strange circumstances. And the fact that he had so many enemies and was linked to so many suspicious deaths, plus the fact that there's so many strange coincidences and things that really don't make sense about this plane crash, including the really suspicious date that it happened, has led many to believe there's far more to this story.
An investigation is taking place that will determine how and why this happened. We take this incident seriously because the White House is the people's house, and it's the job of every president who lives here to keep it safe and secure.